Welcome back to Your Average Witch. In this episode, we hear part 2 of author Amy Blackthorn's story. Hear about how she stopped being a bodyguard and opened a witch shop, how she finally scared off a pastor determined to save her soul, and shares a spell that helped a caterer triple her business in a year. Now let's get to the stories. Okay, let's take the roller coaster ride, because I want to know what makes you angry about the witch community. So we're going to roll down that hill. Then what you love about with the witch community, come back up the hill. And then we're going to go to the joy question.
Okay. That sounds like a definitely a thing we can do.
Okay. So, is there anything that makes you angry about the witch community?
Yes. And I'm attempting to be diplomatic enough, but it makes my teeth hurt, so
whatever.
We're going to see what happens. My biggest...
I just hope it's not me, whatever it is. I just hope I'm not doing whatever it is. God.
The hardest thing, the thing that makes me angry is when we as a community are more interested in cutting each other down than lifting each other up. And it happens more often than I'd like to admit. In the form of, well, I think X person is this. So if you're friends with X person, you're a horrible witch, you're a horrible person, you're not worth. It's like, how many degrees out of that do we go? Well, if you like so and so, then you must be X. Okay, well, if I'm friends with so and so, just like, and do friends of friends count? Like, how far out does that circle go?
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm living my life as a beneficial human on this planet. Also, and in addition to, we can't always... There's only so much background checking you can do when you're accepting a friend request from somebody. You know, and this has been difficult with the Fache book. I get a lot of friend requests from witches who have other witches as their friends, people I've never seen, don't know, haven't spoken with, haven't interacted with. And so far, my only knowledge about them is that they've got 54 other witchcraft authors on their friends list. So they're probably not XYZ.
Yeah.
And so you accept a friend request. But then, 6 months later, you're like, oh, someone says that you like so-and-so. Do I? Do I know this person? Do I have they ever spoken to me? Ever? It's so much harder. And then you get labeled as being XYZ, no matter how anti the crappy thing you are. All that someone knows is that you're a Facebook friend with
they
X
can
person.
Trace it.
And it's like, yeah. I understand where you're coming from, but also doing literally everything I can to be a good person.
Okay, but what do you love about the witch community?
Oh, we are so willing to embrace not just change, but innovation. Innovation is not a fault in the witchcraft community. It's a feature. It's not a bug. I love that people can embrace magic and the idea of growing and changing and really embracing the next thing. It can be much more difficult in a religiously conservative way, and conservative in that not would be necessarily being willing to change. So that idea of growing and brewing something new and magical and incredible, I love that. Like, let's look at the new technology of magic, of witchcraft.
Can you imagine Christians doing emoji prayers like some witches do emoji spells?
No! Oh my God,
their heads would burst.
Oh, heavens no. That would be way out of left field. It would never happen. Oh, and it's funny because the emojis themselves are like, oh, well, we'll just shorthand the little high five emoji for I'm praying for you. But that, utilizing that technology would be definitely an interesting thing. There was a group a few years ago, the 50 states oh goodness, it was a prayer thing, and then there was a witch thing, and they were utilizing ritual technology for cursing as Christians against witches. And it was like, this is not a good look, guys. Don't do that. It's something that most groups don't do and wouldn't talk about even if they did. But it's so neat to see them like think about it. Like, you think magic is bad, but this whole praying for God to punish people, that's spellcasting, my dudes.
It's also whack.
It is absolutely whack. But making sure that they understand, hey, you're actually contributing to the thing that you think that you're not doing. Just blows their mind. I growing up, my parents sent us to whatever church was closest. It wasn't necessarily a religious upbringing thing. It was more or less free babysitting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like Bible,
yeah.
Vacation Bible School, which I loved.
Yes. Just like that. Some time away from your children. And it was always very interesting growing up, thinking and seeing and understanding how they felt or how they saw the church took up a collection so that my sisters and I, the poor kids, could go to a Bible camp that was away, like a sleepaway camp. And the things that these people thought, oh my goodness. My younger sister bought a pendant, or it was either a bracelet or a necklace that had the yin and yang motif. And they were convinced that this was some sort of Jesus conspiracy, to take down the church. Like, are you kidding me? This is from Claire's and it cost $3. It's just unnerving.
Did she even know the significance of it, or is it just because everyone had it at that time, so she wanted it?
Exactly.
Because that's why I wanted it then.
She was probably 9 years old. She saw it in Claire's and thought it looked cool, so she wore it, But yeah, this was some
that chick from that movie is wearing this, and I think she's really cool.
They made her throw it over the fence. So it was off the property of the Bible camp.
That is batshit. People are batshit.
They really are. And it's dangerous. When I came out of the broom closet, my parents were like, okay, that's fine. But I didn't really talk about it with anybody except for my very, very best friend and maybe my boyfriend at the time. It wasn't something the county in which I was going to high school was backwards. We'll be very generous and say backwards. This was the mid-90s, and the Triple K White Sheet Brigade was handing out pamphlets on Sunday morning.
This is making me feel shrieky.
Yay! It was like, this was okay. They were handing out pamphlets. It wasn't like a big secret of the dude is standing there in a hood on a sidewalk in this town, the next town over, every Sunday morning. It's disgusting and horrific, and the fact that you are proud of yourself enough to be out in broad daylight wearing your little costume, your little cosplay for Hayes, So
in Delaware?
No, this was over the line in Maryland.
Oh, still.
Yep. The county.
Way south. I mean, more northern than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and I was really surprised because remember, I grew up in the city. I went to a black elementary school. This is not something that I thought was still a thing.
Yeah.
So I was very careful in who I told and who I allowed to know about my witchcraft. So the guy, smart, the guy I was dating at that time, was, interested and read my book of shadows and was like, oh, let me hang out for a spell. But his most recent ex-girlfriend befriended me. Like, I don't know, I'm giving her the side eye. But at that point, it's not safe to wear pentacle. Hell no. What I did was I had a crescent moon pendant. Mm. Like, this is as out loud as I can be in this county. And she came over with a friend of hers, and hey, does that like mean you're Muslim or something? Like, what is that?
Oh my
Yeah. I was like, no, it's not at all. And I wrote this really well thought out letter about what Wicca is and what my practice looked like, and was trying very hard to be an approachable person that someone could ask questions of. Like, I don't think in any sort of way that you're interested in converting, but I wanted you to know that it's safe to ask questions. And, that letter came back to me 2 weeks later, had been passed around the entire school, and had disgusting things written in it. She outed me for the whole school, the whole town. I got death threats. There was an attempted stoning when I got off the bus one day. Like, it was just not a good, safe place to be. And it's trying to understand and connect with people when it's literally dangerous to try and be your actual self. It's awful and horrible and disgusting. And it was at a time, it was right around when Tempest Smith died. And the story in the news was that some high school football team somewhere here in the U.S., a young freshman girl was stoned to death, was killed by her school's football team because they had been on a losing streak and they blamed her. Like, these are the things that we deal with, and people don't understand why. We understand that it's not necessarily safe to be out of the broom closet. And so when people say, "Oh, I'm not out," like, it is not our choice. It's not our call to give them a hard time about it, because you know what? It's not about us. Everyone has their own choice to make, and they both have pros and cons. Being in the broom closet and writing books with your picture on the back of the book both have pros and cons.
I have to work to remind myself that it's a privilege, that I don't have to worry about that, or that I don't worry about it. When I see, like, I got an email from someone who is underage that said, "Hey, I would like if you would have younger people on." But they, I'm angry. I'm angry, dude.
That anger keeps us safe. I used to have, in my 20s, I was a lot more in your face about it. I was roaming around, wherever I was, and I had a witch's heel bumper sticker on the back of my SUV. I actually had someone run me off the road into oncoming traffic, screaming about "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." And
bitch, like, let's get out of the car then. Let's fucking go.
Let's do this. So I get a lot of concern, care, understanding, some feedback from people who don't understand why I might choose to carry a firearm. And it's like, I've lost the number of fingers. I don't have enough fingers to count the number of times my life has been directly threatened because I'm out of the broom closet. And it's like, there's only so many times I can tell myself, like, "Oh, it's just a fluke, everything's fine," before I need to make sure that I'm not ever in a position to be the victim of a violent attack again. I need to be able to know that I can take care of myself, which is why I got my black belt, which is why I teach the classes that I do. Those things are no longer a choice in my mind. I was the head of a really big meetup group for a number of years that met on the Maryland side of the line and on the Delaware side of the line, because they're two towns literally next to each other. I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I had someone attempt to join the group as an underage member, and I'm like, I love that you want this.
Oh, my heart.
I want this for you, but I cannot let you come to our meetups.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why? I want to be there. And it's like, I understand. And I have been where you are. I've gotten the little verbal head pat of, you're 15, you don't know what you want. And it's like, I've been there. I promise you, I understand. But I cannot risk the safety of every other person being there because you want to understand who you are. literally every other person is in danger. Anytime there's someone that's underage even interested.
Yep.
It wasn't a week later that the parents of this poor soul who reached out threatened to murder me, threatened to burn down my home and kill my family because their child was interested in coming to my meetup. I must have done something to trick them into being interested in witchcraft. Like, and them coming to me doesn't change anything. Of course it's going to be my fault because they can't blame their own child, and I wouldn't want them to.
Yeah.
But it's scary, the stuff that happens. And there's no way I've found to make it not happen. Because trust me, if we could do that, we'd be doing it already. There's just no way to get them to understand that we don't convert people. We don't go out there having marches to get people to
we're not
come to our way
knocking on your door saying, "Have you heard the good news?"
And
I'm not
Hecate is here for you.
I'm not leaving pamphlets in your freaking gate that I put a beware of dog sign on specifically so you don't come to my door. And those are the people that I put it on there for.
Of course it is.
It's not because of salespeople. They don't come here. It's because of fake Jesusers.
There's still, I don't know, had is, sounds like the past tense. There was a church that opened up at the literal end of my street. So the pastor and some lay person started coming to the house. There are 22 churches, 23 now, within a 1 mile radius of my home. And for a while they would send everybody to my house, because you convert a witch, you get extra bonus points in heaven or something.
Oh, yeah,
t-shirt. So,
but not steak knives.
So everyone was sending people to our house for a good while there. And it's a Baptist church, and the pastor would come out and say, "Oh, we'd hope you'd hear the good news that we're open and we're accepting new members and we want you to come and hang out with us." And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. That's not my path, but I wish you well. And you try and be so nice.
Yeah.
Because it's just a decent thing to do. I appreciate you coming by, but no, thank you. Well, this particular church took it as a personal challenge that I wasn't interested in. I tried. I'm a member of the clergy. I have my own church. Oh, well, what church is that? Like, none of your business. Not interested. It was a good long while that I had these people come to the house. I swear it was an accident. I'll put my hand on a stack of somebody else's Book of Shadows. It was an accident, I promise. I was expecting a friend of mine to come by. I jumped in the bathtub with a bright lemony bath bomb that I was not going to waste. I'm like, she'll be at least an hour. It'll be great. I'm going to sit. I'm going to soak. I'm going to enjoy some time to myself in a quiet house. Well, no sooner had I started to unwind that the doorbell rang. I'm like, she is really early. So, like, I grabbed a towel, no sky cloud. I grabbed a towel and ran down the stairs to let her in. It was the pastor from that church, and I had just answered the door naked. I've got, the towel is slipping. I'm trying to throw the door open so my friend can come in and wait while I shower off the rest of my bath bomb. And there's a guy standing there with his little lay pastor. Deacon! That deacon is a word. And they're like, okay, she's naked. I think we left the gas on. We gotta go. Never came back.
All right, then.
Did its job.
Ken's answered the door like that before.
It's fantastic.
And it was in El Paso when we lived down there, and it was some church people, and they didn't come back either. I guess that's just the answer. They're so horrified by the human body, they'll leave and not come back. All right, then.
Yeah, everybody's got their own little, well, if you do this, they won't come back. If you do that, they won't come back. Well, there's 23 different religious traditions we've got the Church of Mo down the street. They are Coptic. It's a Coptic church. It looks like the Alamo. We call it the Church of Mo. Because it looks like the Alamo. It's just interesting that like everybody wanted to send people to our house, and
Wow.
I'm glad I'm glad that they can't be wandering about with the pandemic. Now we just get the letters in the mail saying, to the X family, we wanted to tell you about the good word. Well, I can put that in the recycling a lot easier than I can get you off my doorstep.
Jehovah's Witnesses. I've done Jehovah's Witness calls.
Wow. Luckily, they don't have my phone number. I want to know how they got because they have out my legal name on the envelope saying the X family. But my address and my numbers are unpublished. So I want to know where they got my name from.
Housing? I mean, like if you bought the house.
Nope. I was, it's under the house is under my maiden name.
Oh.
Yeah. So
They're
it's
just skeevy, I guess.
They're definitely, they got some connection there somewhere.
Of course they do. What brings you the most joy in your craft? Or in the witchcraft community? Or whatever. What brings you the most joy?
Seeing, that's the thing. So we talk about being a tiny zygote of a human going into witchcraft stores and finding witchcraft as a tiny person. The look on someone's face the first time they get to go into a real store, and it's life-changing for them. Like just being able to see that, because I can remember being 14 or 15 and thinking you're the only person on the planet who knows what you're talking about, even though it's in a book that you literally bought from Hot Topic. When Hot Topic was cool and they sold stuff like that. So yes, being able to see that, I got my hair standing up on my arms, knowing that feeling for them, that they're not alone, that they can explore their ideas of themselves, who they are as a person. That is a joy that not many people get to understand and experience. For someone else, that sort of transitive joy. I worked, the Coven store, Public and Candle. It's not there anymore. There's different shops that have the same name, but that store doesn't exist anymore. We could always tell when the craft had been on TV, because you'd get 37, 15-year-olds with black eyeliner asking for books on Manon. And it's like, that's not a thing, but let me tell you what is a thing. And so getting to see that look on someone's face when they know that the things that they felt are real, when they can go and talk to an actual person who will listen to them, who will acknowledge them, and really give them the time of day, really. I mean, being a teenager and having literally everyone write you off because you haven't spent as much time on this planet as they have is really disheartening. So getting someone to the point where they're allowed and they're able and they're connected with the ability to be validated, that's my favorite thing. That is, if I can give that to someone else, if I could box it up and mail it to the kids who don't have a local store, I definitely would. There's a lot of gatekeeping that happens, and I'm sure it's worse now with things like the people in Witch Talk telling people what isn't a thing. The gatekeeping that happens can really disenfranchise new witches, and so it's heartbreaking for me to make sure that they can get the materials that they want or get the materials that they need. It's easy to say, oh, well, X store just sells junk, or this store in the mall isn't real, But for people who live in the middle of nowhere, who then, could go a couple states over and maybe find a tarot deck for $5 in a crappy store in the mall, that is worth gold. Because that can validate their entire existence in just one sales transaction. It shouldn't be about the stuff that we buy, but sometimes it is. You can go walking in the forest and find sticks and rocks and pretty shells and all that neat stuff. But being able to walk into a store and have someone tell them that they are valid, you can't pay for that, but it's not something you undervalue it until it happens. You don't necessarily understand the impact that it has until you see it. That's that thing. Yeah.
Love it. Who would you say are the 3 biggest influences on your practice?
Well, I did find my first witchy shop in the late '90s, so Silver Ravenwolf had a really big impact on what I did and who I was for quite a few years. And because she had the accessibility, because her books were available, not necessarily because there was anything earth-shattering, but because she existed.
Yeah, I was thinking that exact term.
Right. When it's funny because looking back, especially prior to '99, we'll say, the number of women who had books on witchcraft were a lot fewer. Doreen Valiente was out of print. You knew that women in witchcraft existed, but Scott Cunningham was the it thing. It's like, okay, well, where can I see myself in a witchcraft community? Well, in the late '90s, it was Silver Ravenwolf. She would come to town and do various classes and empower people to find their own magic. So it wasn't necessarily that what she was doing was groundbreaking, but it was, as a teenager, having someone to see myself in was really important. So the second would be Dorothy Morrison, who is an amazing human, and I would take a bullet for that woman. I adore her. She not only does she, there's never any question about where you stand with her because she will tell you to your face if she has a problem, and that's so wonderful.
That would be great if everyone would do that.
It's so helpful. I was super lucky. After Hurricane Katrina, there was a group of witches who got together to auction off materials from their collections so that they could donate the money to Hurricane Katrina victims. I believe, don't quote me, that it was organized by Dorothy Morrison and M.R. Sellers, who writes witchcraft fiction. His Rowan Gant series is really fun. It's a murder mystery series about a witch who helps the police. It's super fabulous. Not quite cozy mysteries level, but it's it's a little bit more gritty. But they're both fabulous humans. I taught M.R. Sellers how to pick handcuffs, so one of the characters in the story could escape the bad guy. It was really fantastic. So after Hurricane Katrina, this website went up, and it was it was a fake eBay so that people could bid on these items. One of the materials that I wound up winning, I acquired Dorothy Morrison's Book of Shadows. She had printed out on parchment, filled with little bits of artwork and drawings and things, printed very nicely. So I got a 4-inch 3-ring binder and the little protective plastic sleeves. And I put them in, back to back, filled in the little pages, and it overfilled the 4-inch 4-inch 3-ring binder. Man. Yes, it has its own tote bag if I have to move it or do anything with it because it's that heavy.
That is cool.
But so I knew this was something I really wanted. I appreciated her as an author, as a person. But knowing the money was going to go to Hurricane Katrina victims was like, yes, now I can justify the expense because the money's going to a good place, and also I get a gift for donating to this good cause. It's not necessarily why I bought it, but it was a really good motivator, we'll say. But I got to meet her. Where was I? I was Mystical Voyage was a shop in Baltimore from 2007 to 2010. And they had a grand opening event, so I was able to contact her and get her to do the appearance. And so I brought her Book Shadows back to her. I'm like, look, I got the thing. It's a great. So we had a grand old time, and she's an amazing person. I would have a drink with her any day. So that's 2. And the third, it's probably Miss Judith Giles, the author of the Element Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells. we were friends for a good 10 years before she became my editor at Wiser. So it's not necessarily just that she's my editor, but the way that she makes me think about witchcraft as a practice, how we operate as witches, and how families can play a part in creating our own witchcraft system. I mean, she's an amazing human, and I adore her. But her background is she's Hungarian, and the things that she's able to talk to and speak to about the way that she was brought up and the way that people talked about witchcraft in her community really makes me think about how my work, how my writing, how that impacts different groups of people. And I think it makes me a better witch. I'd like to think it makes me a better witch. I could totally be wrong. But it was so impactful to look at the way that we talk about, especially spirits. She does a really incredible class on mystic saints and sages. She has a book on the Encyclopedia of Spirits. So the way that we interact with spirits, the way we interact with her experience working with the saints. My family was raised Catholic. They were all Catholic, but I never had that experience. So I know that that's something that's familially important. So if I have a question, I can call her up and say, so this Saint Martha slaying the dragon, like, what's that all about? We can have those conversations. So she's not just an accessible person and one of the most genuine humans I've ever met in my life. But the books that she creates, the books that she puts out into the universe they're singular events. And they usually contain something that I never would have given any thought or had never looked at it in that position, never looked at it that way. There's, I believe it's Encyclopedia. It's either it's probably Encyclopedia of Spirits. There's an idea of the bartenders, the fabulous humans who service our adult beverages, were originally priestesses of this spirit. In Douglas Adams talks about at the restaurant at the end of the world, talking about those divine spirits who provide us with our spirits. There's a reason they're called spirits. And it gave me such a insight when I was writing Blackthorn's Botanical Brews, because there's potions are a thing, and so there's sections talking about alcohol. My favorite part being that every magical use of alcohol also contains or also is paired with a sober substitution, so that the sober members of our community are also seen and impacted. I wanted to make sure that everyone had that opportunity.
We appreciate that.
I was on a really specifically gnarly medication for 2 years where I could not imbibe alcohol. And I thought I knew better than my doctor.
Oh no.
It was like, the medication is for migraines. And it's particularly nasty. I wound up with kidney stones and all sorts of issues from taking it. But it says very clearly on the label, do not imbibe alcoholic beverages while on this medication. Well, I was at a home show with my best friend. We were wandering the booths and we're looking at furniture, and we pass a wine tasting booth. And they're handing out thimble-sized sips of wine and mead. And I think, that should be fine. It's not enough to do any harm. I'm not actually having a whole drink. I'm just going to have a thimble sip. And so she had a thimble sip and I had a thimble sip. And I got probably 5 minutes away from this booth, and I look at her and I giggled and said, I can feel my feet. It was like, this is not good. I had a thimble of wine. This is probably not good. So I redoubled my efforts. I said, we're not going to do that until I'm off this medication. But so there's a myriad number of reasons why someone would choose not to imbibe, and it's no one's business. Don't be that person who says, why you could just have one. Don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Please
don't do that,
just
people.
Shut up and say okay.
Yeah, because it's none of our business. So yeah, Judith is an amazing human and makes me want to be better for my community, honestly. She's not only thoughtful and caring and giving and responsible, but she helps me see, like, not everything is, the way that you think it is at first. She's a great sounding board when I'm like, am I wrong about a thing? Please tell me if I'm wrong about this thing. She's like, hey, she'll either tell me flat out, nope, you're wrong. Or she'll let me know what her perspective is on that specific issue. But I can always go to her when I have anything to talk about, questions, and not necessarily all work. We were friends for 10 years before we started working together. So that's a lot of really great conversations right there. So Silver Ravenwolf, Dorothy Morrison, and Judith Giles.
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask?
Oh, how did my tea shop start is a magical story of getting out of the security business.
Oh, yeah.
So I had, as I mentioned, I worked the 2 high rises in Wilmington, Delaware. We were across the street from each other. And I was the head of security for all 35 floors of people. So that's a number of human bodies that I am responsible for. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of 2 o'clock in the morning phone calls and putting out literal fires. So it got to a point where I had no time left to be a magical person. I was losing connection with who I was as a magical person. Side detour, one of my most stressful days was not the first day of training where I got, still training. I got a bomb threat, a death threat, and a suspicious package in one day.
Jesus.
That was not...
Calm down, universe.
There were 2 of the companies within that building were law firms, very large, prestigious law firms that, years later I made friends with someone in Atlanta who works for a law company who knew the 2 law firms that I personally provided protection for. Like, they were that big. Those were not my most stressful days. One of the most stressful days I had in that building was the day one of my officers came to me. I got in at 5:30 in the morning. It's awful. Don't do that. Now I'm awake at 5:30 in the morning because I haven't gone to bed yet. Not the other way around.
That's the life I need.
So it's 5:30 in the morning. I'm bleary-eyed. I'm holding one eye open as I go to my desk to relieve the overnight guard who guards my desk while I'm not there. I send him into the basement. He relieves the guy down there. He goes and watches the camera for a couple hours. So I walk in. I can't drink caffeine. I don't like coffee. I have a very limited caffeine intake amount before I get to hives and heart palpitations. So I just got to be bleary-eyed and go with it. And so I walk in, and we'll call him Carl. Says, "Oh, hey, I'm, things were quiet. There's nothing to report. I'm going to head downstairs." And he stops and he turns back around and he says, "Oh, by the way, so you're a witch, huh?" Excuse me? Quoi? What? What did you just say to me? And my first thought is, this is Delaware. Who does he talk to? I mean, Delaware is
what have you been digging in?
Right, this is the second smallest state. So he's bound to run into somebody who knows me as Amy Blackthorn. I'm like, what did I miss? And he says, "Oh, yeah. I was just doing some perusing and found out you're a witch." So he's very proud of himself. He's very self-satisfied that because I spent so much time compartmentalizing my life that I don't talk about myself outside of work. Like, that's none of your business. This is work. But it bothered him so much that he did his very own background check. Found out I was a witch. And immediately went downstairs, told the dude he was relieving, who told the next guard who came in, who's my rover. So she came up, of course, little smirky smile, like, "Oh, hey, so, how you doing, Elizabeth?" Like, "Okay, yeah, I got Elizabeth Montgomery, yeah, bewitched, very cute." The next guy who came in at 9 o'clock in the morning called me on the phone to see if I had changed the colors of the orchids behind me on the station magically with a little twitch of my nose. Like, very funny. That was changed out last week. Like, everyone's very amused.
Wow.
It's the big joke. congratulations, you're a crap person. So the stress just got to be too much. I'm not a witchy person anymore. I don't have any energy left for anything. There's no work-life balance. I'm just a miserable person. So I'm out. So I train my replacement and I leave. I didn't have anything else lined up. I just needed to not be in this building anymore. So my very first day as a joyfully unemployed person, I woke up. I'm like, okay, I have no idea what to do with my life now. What do I do? So I go in the kitchen and I dig out the big cauldron. It's 24 inches across, cast iron jobber, weighs 30 pounds. If it weighs a pound. And I dig out my Van oil that I make, and I grabbed a big pillar candle, and I'm anointing, and I'm carving, and I'm chanting, and I'm praying, and I'm doing all these things to try and get out all this baggage left over from this awful job. I'm going to make room for something new and amazing and beautiful. Perfect. Okay. Well, I light the lighter, and I'm just about to light the wick on this pillar candle when the doorbell rings. And I laugh, and I'm like, that is the fastest magic I have ever done. And I go and I answer the door, and it's the mail lady. I got to sign for a package. It's no big deal. So I come back into the kitchen, and I'm struck by the smell of the lemongrass in my Van oil. Like, that smells incredible. That is a thing. And I thought, if I had a tea that I could sip on while the candle burns itself down, I could do my working while the working was happening and just layer that intention and just have that much more magical energy focused towards my outcome. And the light bulb goes on over my head, and I think, well, holy crap. I guess I have to do that now. Because I've been brewing and blending and creating my own teas forever. I mean, I had been doing it for friends for 6 or 7 years before that. I had the experience. My favorite thing was to create teas based on my favorite candy I was craving at that point. I was trying to be a good kid, not just gorge myself with candy. My favorite tasted like red Tootsie Pops. I'm like, why am I not doing this? So I sat down, and the next thing you know, I've got 15 teas, and 7 years later, I have 103. Huh. Plus candles, plus ritual oils, plus the stuff that I make at home. So it's so much more of a holistic approach to my magic. I can just get myself what I need, and if somebody else benefits from it, great. But it was really born out of that need for connection to really reconnect with my magic and who I was at that point and who I wanted to be going forward. And so it's been around for, in February it'll be 8 years since I left that job and walked directly into my own shop. And I get a lot of people say, well, why don't you just open a brick and mortar store? And I'm like, I couldn't take care of a brick and mortar store and still tour as an author or write books as an author. I couldn't do any of that stuff. I'd be changed to a storefront. So this way I can write in the mornings and fill tea orders in the afternoons, and I can give myself the novelty that ADHD demands without chaining myself to a desk that makes me miserable.
I wish society made that easier for everyone.
Goodness, yes. Universal basic income would solve a lot of issues.
Yeah.
You could take a job that actually has meaning for you rather than just the most recent thing that pays money.
Oh, God, I know.
And it's really disturbing and upsetting how little security officers who are paid to carry a firearm make. Like, the upwards of $14 an hour to carry a firearm out where people are.
Who would you like to see on the show?
Oh, goodness. Well, Judith definitely, because she's a joy to talk to, first of all. But she knows so many neat things that you never think about. Like, there's a class that she does on the Black Madonnas that I would delete from my brain and listen to it every day.
I do not even know what you're talking about.
See? She's just amazing. So Judica is always the top of my list. Who else? Lara Tempest Ackruff is a joy to talk to.
Yeah.
she's just a joy of a human.
I'm nervous to approach her, but yeah, I would love that.
Well, I would absolutely make an introduction if that were
Do you know,
desired.
I have lots of connections to her because of belly dance.
Yes! I still have those DVDs. Yes, by the way. I had them on VHS. VHS!
I saw her do a ritual on stage at Tribal Fest one year.
That's fantastic. The day that I connected those two dots in my brain, you'd have thought I just discovered cold fusion.
But yeah, that's goals. I'm just scared to talk to her and approach her about
it. Well, yes, she is a joy to speak with, and I'm sure she would enjoy talking to you. So when you feel about your feels, then you the offer stands.
Give you a little tap. Yeah.
9 out of 10 9 out of 10 times when someone says I know a guy, they mean me.
Okay. Now, please recommend something.
Anything?
Yep.
Ooh. There's so much equipment that goes with burning resin incenses. I didn't stop to think about how many accoutrements they required until I was writing Sacred Smoke and had to write it all down. Like the tongs and the spoons and the windproof lighters, because if your charcoal is open for 2 minutes, it denatures and you can't light it at all. What? So many things. Yeah, if you leave your charcoal,
I use a torch, so it starts.
Yes. Get the torch.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Denatures?
Yeah, the saltpeter is what makes it crackle and sparkle and light all the way through. So if you live in
away?
Yes, because I live where humid goes to die, so it's summers are 93 and 94% humidity. You can't breathe when you go outside. So yeah, that can denature. So torches and windproof lighters are the best. So if you don't have the wherewithal, if you don't want to screw with all the accoutrement, the sensors and the things and the tongs and the spoons and all that, there's an incense company. Fred Soul is the name of the company, and I can never remember if it's 1 L or 2. But what he does is a very sweet older man who has a shop in Arizona. Yeah, it's 2 L's.
Hey.
Fred Soul, SOLL.com. And Tijeras, New Mexico, not Arizona. And I was so sure it was Arizona. What he does, what he created, what he designed is resin on a stick. He takes the long thin pieces of bamboo that normally get rolled in maca powder and then scented. He takes the bamboo and actually dips the bamboo into melted resin and hangs them up to dry.
Oh.
So you can burn actual resin without charcoal, without any of this other stuff. And because it's resin, it's real resin on a stick, it'll burn for an hour or two instead of the 15 minutes that a dried out punk stick will give you.
I want that because I don't like having charcoal in the house.
It's gorgeous. It's amazing. They're a little pricey because they actually use real resin. It probably works out to $1 a stick. So they have real dragon's blood and they have real frankincense and myrrh, and you can burn it without having charcoal, without needing the sand or burning yourself, having to pick up a censer 3 hours later. So it burns.
You might set your smoke alarms off, but at least you're not inhaling charcoal fumes.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a great company. It's harder to find them in stores because he's a small organization, so he has a hard time doing big bulk orders. But there's a ton of different flavors. There's a ton of different scents, and it's just incredible. Their pinyon pine is godly. But yeah, fredsoul.com. If I recommended nothing to anyone else ever, like that incense, every time there's a new store that opens up where I go, I'm like, go buy this incense. It's incredible. They have it on Amazon, but you can buy it directly from the producer on
him.
Yes. These sweet, amazing humans in Bernalillo County, New Mexico. So yeah, it's great. Mystical Voyage used to sell it. I asked Lori, please carry this stuff. I found it in Belgian candle in the late 90s and never looked back. They're, the other incense that I really like is Essential Essences. It's white and blue label with a gold sun on it. Like, those are my two incense people. The cheap one is $3 a pack, and there's the Fred Sol that's $1 a stick, but my goodness, it's worth it.
Because it's not incense. Resin.
Yes, exactly. And you don't need the stuff. I'm so happy when I don't have to dig out my cauldron and the sand and the tongs and the charcoal and, 87 other things.
Okay, now the last question is a story. Please tell me a story that you love to tell.
Oh, goodness. I can't even think about it with a straight face. So I mentioned my first tradition, and by the time I left, there was 550 witches in like 50 covens in North America. So there was one coven in Canada. So it's a big tradition. There's a lot of people, a lot of moving parts. And this story has two parts. It was my very first, we called it clan camping. The whole tradition would get together. So 500 witches in the woods of Pennsylvania, running around in robes and cords and whatnot, taking over an entire end of a state park. So every coven has its own section, and each member of the coven has their own camping area. Put your tent. It was primitive camping. There's like a little shower house, and that's it. So there's the larger state park, but we took the whole end loop of this area. We roped it off. It's all us. There's no mom with kids wandering amongst 500 witches with athames and, glitter. So it was really amusing because we had that closed off loop. Every so often we'd get people who would just drive through, like they made a wrong turn, and so you got mom's station wagon with 8 kids with their faces pressed up against the glass looking at 500 witches with robes and skins and whatever accoutrements, looking at this, and they're like, oh, okay, what's happening here? Every so often they do 2 loops. They could make sure they saw what they really saw. So I had been a few years in a row. I'd been with this tradition for a number of years. But my very first camping event, it had been the second or third one. The tradition hired a caterer to come in and feed all 500 of us, so that way, individual fires weren't happening. You couldn't cook in your area. It was a fire hazard. So they brought in a caterer to, we just do buffet serving for our meals for the weekend. So the traditions got robes. Yeah, everyone's wearing black robes. People are wearing their cords. Some people are having elevations done, so they're wearing. There's some people with deer skins on. There's all things. And so the caterer, by the third or fourth meal that they had served us, very sweet, by the way, they were very respectful. They finally said, so what's going on here? They're trying very hard to be respectful, but also like, what the actual is happening here? So the head of the tradition says, oh, this is our group event, everyone who's a part of our church gets together and we camp all weekend, and we get to have fellowship, and we get to have, we recognize people who have made accomplishments or strides in their practice. And so that's what we do for the whole weekend, where we have togetherness and we get to enjoy each other's company. And the woman says, but, so you guys are witches, right? She says, yes, we're all witches. And the woman says, so I know you probably get this a lot. Like, do you do spells? And she says, yes, we do. We do spells. We sort of, it's an enacted prayer. We're making sure that we have things that we need in our life. She said, if you'd want, we can show you what we mean. I'd be happy to do a spell for you. She says, well, I don't know. What kind of thing would you do? She says, well, I really appreciate you coming out here and feeding 550 people and not being completely weirded out. There's a bunch of people in black robes running around. So I would love to bless your business and thank you for taking care of us. She said, oh, I guess that couldn't hurt. So our high priestess and a couple of they gather a few people around, and she starts clapping and chanting, "Gold and silver, coins galore, all are coming to your door." And so everyone around picks up the chant, and more people are chanting and clapping and stomping, and she brings it to a crescendo and lets go of that energy. And the fabulous woman catering our lunches and dinners and says, "Oh, huh, that was definitely something. Thanks, I think." Well, wouldn't you know, she was such an amazing human. She was so respectful, and the food was great, and the price was right, that we invited her back the next year. And so I asked her, like, last year we did a thing, and it was a whole production. So how did that blessing work out for you? Do you think that our spell was effective? And she said, since I left here last year, my business has tripled. And I really think it's thanks to you, all people. And we're like, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. But also thank you for being willing to experience something new and potentially scary and different. But yeah, her business had tripled in that year, and she really thought that it was thanks also, for her hard work, but really made her feel as though something happened. It made her believe in spell work. It made her believe in magic and believe in who we are as witches. And for someone to A, not be threatened by that, but B, be genuinely thankful, even from outside our community, was a big deal for me. I had so many people like, "Oh, that witches aren't real." Like, I'm real. I look in the mirror every morning. I got bills to pay. But it was really great for having her say, "Look, I really, not only do I appreciate you, but I believe in and understand what you're talking about when you say that now."
I'm torn between wanting something to do that for me and also being really hungry. Because you're talking about catering.
Well, it's a very viable spell, so feel free to try that at home. To our listeners, it's a very easy spell. You can add a candle, you can add an incense, you can add whatever you want to it, but the chant works very well. It's very easy to remember.
Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is the best interview I've had in a while.
Oh, yay! I try to just make it fun and like have a conversation. Oh, good.
I've done a lot of interviews in the last 3 years, and the ones that work the best and that flow the best are just the conversations that people have between each other. It just so happens that we have some friends to keep us company while we have our chat.
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll see you around the internet.
That'll be fun. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Your Average Witch. You can find us all around the internet on Instagram at Your Average Witch Podcast, Twitter at Average Witch Pod, Facebook at facebook.com/Your Average Witch Podcast, at YourAverageWitchPodcast.com, and at your favorite podcast service. Want to help the podcast grow? Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You just might hear your review read at the end of the next episode. If you'd like to recommend someone for the podcast, like to be on it yourself, or if you'd like to advertise, well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll see you around the internet.
That'll be fun. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Your Average Witch. You can find us all around the internet on Instagram at Your Average Witch Podcast, Twitter at Average Witch Pod, Facebook at facebook.com/Your Average Witch Podcast, at YourAverageWitchPodcast.com, and at your favorite podcast service. Want to help the podcast grow? Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You just might hear your review read at the end of the next episode. If you'd like to recommend someone for the podcast, like to be on it yourself, or if you'd like to advertise on the podcast, send an email to YourAverageWitchPodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you when the moon changes.